When I saw it was racism in Minnesota, it really piqued my curiosity. We may be more progressive, but we're still racist.
Hi, I'm Brandon Fertig of The Periphery. On January 13, 2019, Dr. William Green, history professor at Augsburg University in Minneapolis, gave a talk titled Racism in Minnesota, How We Got Here. I attended, but not to watch the talk, to speak with attendees following the talk. I sought a better understanding of progressive social class theories, of how these folks see their world, and ultimately of their explanations and recommendations for groups who don't do as well, which in Minnesota are pronounced, as we have some of the nation's highest racial achievement gaps. What follows is a compilation of several interviews, edited and arranged around the specific questions I posed. For those watching this who are already lean to the political left, you'll enjoy the company of like-minded thinkers. For those watching this who do not think and feel similarly, this is an opportunity to better understand and empathize with those who do, as well as learn the insights they have to offer. Topic number 1. What explains the racial achievement gaps in the U.S.?
White supremacy and structures of racial inequality that manage every aspect of our lives and community and government and everything.
We've never let anybody with darker skin than us do better than us. And maybe that's universal.
America has opportunity, and they are very slow to share that opportunity. And so that's why it's not getting to everyday people.
And the belief that people in poverty, people in jail have done something to deserve where they are or to deserve their plight and their circumstances, when in fact there are huge structures at play that have been in play for ever and ever and ever that push resources toward my husband, toward myself, denying other people access to the same. And somehow it's all invisible to me, so I can think I have this because I'm amazing. And I'm not. I'm a white woman living in a white supremacist system. Something made this happen, something deeply intentional, right? This isn't an accident.
So what are some of the causes or symptoms of this systemic problem?
Well, why was it that Minnesota was able to take on these legislative approaches while at the same time still exhibiting the racism in their day-to-day lives?
Having high-minded principles, laws, and policies that speak of equality, that speak of integration and of leveling the playing field, and yet the actual practice is that they don't get done.
Where you have people that are willing to be progressive, and then they're going to move when their school district becomes diverse, or they're going to, just all the different ways that people don't want to actually deal with it on the day-to-day, even though big picture-wise they might hypothetically agree that injustice is injustice.
I heard one teacher friend of mine say, and I've seen it in the public schools, that kids of different races are treated differently by the schools from the get-go. It's like, oh, poor you just don't get it, do you? We'll put you in a remedial class. The same thing is that we'll save you from yourself.
The everyday citizens, they resist because they don't understand that we're kind of on the same team. I mean, when you look at sports, when sports first became integrated and it was kind of normal, all the citizens who were resistant, the fans that were resistant before that, understood that, hey, we're going to win more. I think when they're passing these laws, a lot of these citizens may not be aware of it and still acting on the old behavior of the past and before the laws were passed. And I think more needs to be done with anything that we do to change the world to promote those laws.
African Americans have been effectively pushed out of affirmative action. Everyone else but African Americans have been benefiting from it.
Digging a little deeper, they shared why they believe there exists this malice toward black people.
Because there's so much white fear. Fear for retribution of past behavior. Fear that the boogie monster that they've made in their mind might come home.
White America, as a collective, has long since been afraid of African Americans getting on the same page as them, being on an even playing field, for the fact that they're afraid that African Americans, if given the opportunity, will eclipse them.
When you're coming from a place of fear and protecting your family, you do a lot of despicable and undesirable things. Most lynchings were done against wealthy, affluent, educated men to scare the masses into not participating in politics and business. I mean, what are you afraid of? There is something super visceral in that response.
Topic number 2. How do you think coming to a talk like this about the history of racism actually helps struggling communities today?
Every time a whole group of us sit together and talk and listen to our history, there's always a chance for more growth and more acceptance, you know?
In order to know where you're going, you must first know where you've been.
If you don't really see where it comes from, where your thoughts and feelings come from and how they're influenced by what was before, are you going to think it's wrong to do that? Maybe not.
We have to continue to remind individuals that have turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to this, where this all started, how we got to this point.
But if you have some insight, you can go, oh, no. See how that, it's like realizing, no, that's racist. You can't do it anymore.
Do you walk away from this talk thinking there's more I can do and maybe some ideas of what it is you can do?
No. I'm just pleased to have the information, something new to think about. I don't know what I could particularly do to make things any different, except to feel different and to act different to my neighbors and the kids I see in my neighborhood and be interested in how they're doing.
Yeah.
Does that sound too simplistic?
No, it doesn't. I think Minnesota suffers from a lack of connection.
Oh.
I think...
And I think part of it is that we walk around for 5 months of the year stuffed in a great big sausage casing. We dare not even look at each other. We're in a big hood. But yeah, we do. We're real nice. But are we? No, not really.
Knowing history is helpful to understanding any given state of affairs, and in the case of race relations, to sympathizing with those who've been mistreated. More than having the knowledge, some of these individuals interviewed go further by maintaining a study of progressive social theory, as well as advocating it. I follow up by asking about any potential negative implications to such theory and advocacy. You'll see their various reactions to this question.
So I've been doing a lot of reading and research about race, racism, and whiteness over the last few years, and trying to educate myself, trying to find language to talk to other white people, because I think that's probably our biggest barrier, is that we have so much denial, and I don't even know if it's denial, but unwillingness to talk about it or admit that it's real.
Okay, so I'm just going to show you what I'm reading right now. You can't see part of the title, but it's Ain't I a Woman? Written by Bell Hooks, who is one of the founding thinkers, and she's still alive in her 60s, one of the founding thinkers of black feminist theory.
So I'm just on a hunt for language and information and resources to pass on to my white friends and acquaintances.
Okay, so I am a white cisgender male. I am on what I call the wrong side of just about every dimension of privilege, of power, of unbalance. And I'm every day I'm trying to learn something, and because I need to unlearn the way I was programmed and the way the world treats me.
For someone like myself, being privileged and being a white male, it can remind me, it can be easy to just fall back into the pattern of ignoring what I know is out there because it's not affecting me on the day-to-day. But then every time I have an opportunity to go to something like this, it forces me to confront my privilege and then again readdress how I need to be part of the change, as opposed to just being a bystander to it in society. Whether it's how you're voting, whether it's where you're living, whether it's protesting, there's multitudes of ways that you can get involved. My strength is in education, where I can both teach my students with privilege to maybe get a better understanding of where that privilege comes from, and then maybe with students of color to hopefully give some of the language and background so that they can put to words some of the stuff that they know in their hearts and be able to articulate that.
Do you talk about that in class?
Well, I do teach an African American Studies course, and so that's a key. That is essentially the curriculum, but then also in other history classes, it's a common topic. Like, you have to start with, this is why there's a problem, but then you also always have to make sure that you get into, and this is what we can do about it.
Are you so bold in your classes as to tell white students about privilege and to suggest that they're privileged?
Yes. So it's, I don't know, I think probably the biggest response I might get that's not what I'm looking for would just be indifference and going back onto their cell phone. But in terms of, I think most kids, at least in a place like Minnesota, are hearing that more often. It's not something that's new to kids. So
do some get offended? Do some
do
tell you to shut up, leave me alone, I'm not going to be guilted for being white? Do you get any responses like that?
A little bit. More often, I think kids will just be quieter and not want to engage in that. So, but I do sometimes encounter, I have one student in particular I'm thinking about right now that has been an ongoing struggle with issues around some of this. So,
and how do you see that response from him? As stubbornness, as just resistance to open his eyes, or?
Well, I think, in the whole Trumpian universe that we're in right now, there's also been the backlash of, and kids are looking at websites like Reddit and 4chan and articulating kind of this nationalist language. They feel wronged. They feel like their experiences, we were just talking about in there with the questioning, reverse racism. So, I mean, there are some kids that will take some points of discussing that, and then there's a whole online world that I'm not necessarily privy to, where I think a lot of this is going back and forth.
And then last question, are you worried about telling your white students about privilege, their privilege, and it unnecessarily making them feel guilty? Like, have you had any walk out feeling bad about themselves or just being who they are?
One thing I try to do, I'm sure that has happened, but I also try to say, and let's meet this white guy. He was also involved in helping. I try to bring home the message that, at the end of the day, racism is something that is experienced by people of color, but it will never be dealt with until white people are the ones that actually take an active role. You don't have to explain to a person of color that there's racism in this world. You have to explain it to someone who's white and never experiences it.
People need to educate ourselves, and especially when I say people, I mostly mean the people who have the power and who have the money, and that's mostly white, male, heterosexual people. We are the ones who still run the society, and we are the ones, it's our problem, and we are the ones that need to learn and need to change. So, starting with me.
So the way the world is, where the white, male, straight, whatever, that demographic is in charge, do you worry then that it tells everyone else you're at the mercy of this demographic, you and me, frankly, you're at the mercy of what we do, so until we change, you're stuck? Do you worry about us thinking that, them thinking that? Because the one thing that does bother me about that idea is that it kind of makes them helpless, it seems, unless we change.
It's a good question, and I'm not sure I know enough to be able to give a really good answer, but those messages, again, are there everywhere, all around us, every day, whether it's the news, whether it's entertainment, whether it's media, even just the images of what is considered beauty and fashion and how it's marketed, all of that, not just on race, gender, all these different ways.
Do you think that they are unable to reach the same standard of living as the white community unless or only if the whites let them?
Yeah, I'm afraid so, in my opinion, because there's individuals in positions of power that are still shortchanging us. The average, if you look at just the median income of the average African American is $50,000 and below. That's scary. Whereas our white counterparts, if we're doing the same work, having the same kind of education, they're in the stratosphere.
And I disagree with that. I think it has to be leadership in the minority communities to engage everyone in power. And so I don't think it's when you say the whites will let them. I think it could be the minorities themselves doing it, but because they will have that type of engagement.
What if I change it to say, is the black community stuck unless the structure changes?
Yeah.
And
It
The
is.
structure needs to change.
African Americans have been locked into a permanent underclass. We've been locked into it for a while. Can we dig ourselves out? Sure, it's going to take time.
What I don't understand is why we don't just have open revolt because of how horrible it is all the time and has been for several hundred years. I'm amazed that the people that are oppressed in our system have put up with it so long and continue to try to work within its structures. And I think we better fix those structures if we want anything like that to continue.
I just feel like going back to the whole white people let other groups do things or men let women do things. I think people have to let go of that analogy. I feel like it's like in the land of, I want to say this, Charles Schultz and Charlie Brown. It's not Lucy holding the football and Charlie having to run up and play with Lucy all the time.
This time I'm gonna kick that football clear to the moon!
Charlie Brown could take his football and play with somebody else, okay? So everybody needs to realize that the obstacles that you see in your life, you cannot control. Whether it's fair, whether it's just, whether it's wrong, whether it's right, you are not gonna let this keep you from achieving your God-given right, your God-given dream, your God-given ability. You're not gonna let them keep you back. You've gotta take the Tyler Perry and the Oprah Winfrey and the other people who have shown you a direction or a light to achieve what you want.
Lastly, topic number 3. Tell me about your hope for the future.
I kind of look at the Trump election as like the last dying gasp is my hope of like just recognizing that history is moving in this direction. I think once the United States is a majority of people of color, that just changes the dynamic, and that we will have to confront these issues and we'll have to have more economic equality. We will start to address issues of healthcare and housing and all other pieces, and then it starts to filter into everything.
There was one thing for me that gave me some hope. There was one, I forget the specific law, but there was one particular law, again it was late 1800s, and that one law passed, and what happened was it was tied to the money. It said, you're not going to get the funding. You can do what you want. It had to do with schools. I'm not sure if it was integration exactly, but it had to do with schools. And that it didn't say you can't do it. It said you can do what you want. But if you don't follow this policy, you're just not going to get any government funding for your schools. And so basically they towed the line and they followed up. Well, we could do the same thing today. If we had a law, if Congress would pass it in such a way, the appropriation that says the Defense Department doesn't get $1 until we end poverty. Can you imagine that? I bet we would still have money for the Defense Department, but we would figure out a way to end poverty. I'm just not sure how to make our government actually do ethical things, to do the right thing.
We have to do some house cleaning. People that have been holding these jobs that have been holding these positions of power for years and have had decades of opportunity to enforce the stuff but didn't until it served them best, they gotta go.
I do have a lot of hope because I felt very similar to how he felt
You see the freshman
in terms
class.
of, yeah, the freshman
Freshman class of
class.
Congress.
to see that and the sentiment of how we feel like in terms of majority, I would say, yeah, there is hope for that.
The proof of that is to take you a full circle back over 100 years ago to who helped the women get the right to vote. It wasn't white men, it was the black men, the black Republican men who had been elected after Reconstruction that helped the women get the right to vote. It all full circle. Good precedent sets good precedent, good behavior pulls good behavior. It all starts a cycle of goodness. It's really every day getting up and choosing to step in the light instead of towards the fear or towards the darkness.
I'm actually kind of happy because of social media and what technology allows that there are more sources available, and people, even somebody with no voice and with no credentials, can write a blog post or a tweet, can literally one tweet, and it can become viral, and they can become overnight famous around the world. And there are brilliant people out there, and you don't even necessarily have to be brilliant to have a good idea, but there is a great pool, and so there are opportunities for new ideas, and so that is something that really gives me hope.
Communication and breaking down the barriers of there being two separate communities is the goal. I mean, it's the hope, because once you face your fear, you find out a lot of times it was really unfounded.
Right.
You had nothing to worry about.
As we proceed in considering and addressing pressing social matters, I believe it's important to gain the insights offered by various political persuasions. So whether you agree or not with much of what was advanced by those in this video, hopefully my discussions with them help deepen your understanding of these topics and guide you along a solution-oriented mindset. Thanks for watching. Thanks to those who leave a like and comment. Please subscribe to receive updates and new videos from this channel. And to help keep this channel going and to receive other community benefits, membership at our Patreon account starts at just $1 a month. A link is in the description below. We'll see you next time.